This was like a request from a couple other companies to this anger thing. And so it's like, okay, irritability is a secondary emotion from mad. And so of course, this irritability that's going on, we're all very normal in it. It's textbook for times of stress, right? We get irritable, we get short fused, we get just too much is going on. We're juggling, we get burned out. There's lots of reasons why increased irritability happens. And so we're going to go over some things. And yeah, and as I reference other webinars, you can go to the YouTube channel and find them, because there's lots and lots of, it's like, oh, if we want more on boundaries, there's like 3 on boundaries: toxic people and boundaries, and parenting and boundaries. And so there's lots more. So it's very simple. And this one is going to be, we're just going to keep to 40-45 minutes. So we have time for questions at the end, and you can just chat those questions. And then Heather will read through them. But so go ahead and chat them during the webinar if you want, because then you won't forget them, and then we'll talk about it at the end. But at the end, we've kind of found that it's like, okay, I probably will cover it, and so if you think of it, chat it, and then if I cover it, if I don't, then it's a good question for everybody at the end to go over. So let's see. Okay, so this is the benefit. Of course, those of you that have the benefit, you're probably pretty familiar. We're doing video and phone counseling, so people can, have that option. The free educational classes, of course, are on YouTube, and the 24/7 crisis line. We have crisis workers that work 24/7. So there's, sometimes that's helpful for when on the weekends when you just really don't know what to do, or of someone or your family member. So I have this quote several places in webinars. I love it because, so I'm an emotional coach therapist for sure. Emotions are good. All of us, anger is a positive emotion. We can all be angry, but what's really difficult is being angry with the right person at the right degree, at the right time, and the right purpose, right? That's being assertive too. So that's not in everybody's power. You have to have all of those, not just one. You have to have all of them. So it's like, oh, the right person. Okay, let's, I'm a little bit angry with you. I'm really disappointed, because that's, all of our kids. You're going to be disappointed. Sorry to break the news, but we're going to be disappointed in our kids. And it's like, okay, for the right degree and the right time and the right purpose. So think about all these things. The right purpose to me is your value system. Like, yeah, I'm really disappointed. I'm really angry. I'm really angry right now. And I want to yell at you. So I'm going to back up 2 feet, and I'm going to have to talk about this with you later. So the right time. This is huge. This is like step by step by step. But it's like, that takes a lot of power, and that takes a lot of work. And that is not easy. It's super not easy, because I'll explain fight, flight, or freeze, and why we stay in our survival brain, and why we just get fight. We go into fight mode. So so this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to define anger, how pressure hijacks the brain. I love my P words: pressure, powerless. The opposite is proactive and power. So pressure doesn't work, perfectionism doesn't work, and that really hijacks the brain, and it hijacks emotions. So that's a problem. I'm a huge pick your battles instead of your pick your boundaries instead of your battles. I despise the statement. I don't know what generation came up with pick your battles. Why are we battling? So I and the other one that I despise, we're just going to wipe this off the earth, these 2 statements, okay? All together, everybody. Never go to bed angry, and pick your battles. Okay, wait a minute. So we're supposed to stay up till 1 o'clock and scream and be angry at our teen when they come home late, or we're supposed to pick battles. I'm like, So my theory is, why are we battling in the first place? So we just pick boundaries, select your boundaries, stick to them. There's no battle, zero battle. So why are we battling? It's a fight to me, that word. So how do we feed new outlets to self-power? We're going to talk about boundaries, and then roots and values, and how we grow those roots. So it's a tree. So your roots are deep in this way or this way. So your roots, your value system is deep into your roots, but also your trauma, your shame, and your lots of root issues that keep us from moving forward. So here's the myths about anger. It's inherited. It's not. It leads to aggression, rage. No, you can have anger and you don't have to be aggressive, or you don't have to fight, or you don't have to rage. And anger gets what you want. No, it really doesn't. It usually, I mean, that's a 100%. It just doesn't get what you want. Anger is not a habit. Anger is a habit because the neural pathways will wire and it becomes a habit in the brain, and you will revert back to your midbrain, to your fight, flight, or freeze. Anger is a primary emotion. It's not. Sorry. I go with my wheel, and I don't even have this wheel in here, but it's in the other Emotional Intelligence 1 and 2 on YouTube. Those are for adults. Emotional Intelligence 1 and 2 are awesome because they go through all of emotional intelligence. There's 2 of those on there. And then the emotional coaching is Gottman's 5 steps to emotionally coaching your child. So it is not a primary emotion. So primary emotion is mad, sad, shame, happy, scared, things like that. So anger, so there is some people that say anger is a primary emotion, some people don't, but I put it in a category of secondary emotion. So here's mad, and then here's anger and rage, and it goes into a higher level of secondary emotion. Okay. So venting anger physically is therapeutic. We taught that in parenting years and years ago, right? Or a lot of parenting books that, oh yes, go teach your kid to, when they're really angry, to punch their pillow. So anger physical is not, when we're angry and then add physical to it, is not therapeutic. We have found that just adds to the habit. That actually adds to the neural pathways, right? So what do we do instead? Well, there's lots of things, and that's in the emotional coaching video. But when you're not mad is when we want to punch the punching bag and get some frustration out. When you're not extremely 8, 9, or 10, we want to, if we're just 5 and we're just mad, okay, but this is venting anger in a way, in a physical, violent way. People are like, I've had adults that when I worked with substance abuse and stuff, they're like, yeah, I just punch a board. I go out and just punch a board. I have this board that I punch when I'm just really ticked off, and, bloody knuckles and everything. And I'm like, yeah, is that working for you? To punch something, like when you're really, really raging, it's violent. It's not. Okay, so the 3 types of anger, these are actually the 3 types of anger. I taught anger management groups for 6 years. I taught court-ordered anger management classes, and this is what I taught. I mean, so aggressive, passive aggressive, and passive, they are my favorite, because this is what we do as an adult. What we do in our survival brain as a child, and when we were cavemen, we fight, flee, or freeze, or flight. So it's either one. So fight is aggressive. So I've put these 2 together because they go together. So when we go into fight, flight, or freeze, if you've heard of that, and if you haven't, there's lots of other webinars on that, because I can't touch, I could talk about fight, flight, or freeze like for hours, just that. And understanding what happens in the midbrain instead of the frontal lobes when we go into our back of our brain and to aggressive survival brain and stress brain. So aggressive is fight. Passive aggressive is flee or flight. We're just going to flee. We're going to say something really mean and then just run out that's passive aggressive. So passive is freezing. So if you're passive and you like to freeze and you don't like conflict and you like to run away from that and you don't confront people because you're afraid, of conflict, you're a passive personality. You're using your freeze brain. And these are from past childhood neural pathways that wire together that says when you have aggression, when someone's aggressive towards you, you shut down. Well, that makes sense because that's what we do. When we have this happen, we do this. We either run away or we freeze or we fight the bully. So this is what we've trained ourselves to do for our whole childhood until we're 26, actually, till we're done with adolescence, till our brains develop. And what happens is in adulthood, they don't serve us well. What serves us well is how to be assertive, direct with respect is the definition of that. And there's only 3 ways that we do that and put up boundaries assertively is I feel and I need and I'm willing to do. And that's all you need to know. It's like, how do we be assertive? Well, I feel this way and I really need you to talk to me about this later because you're too upset. And I'm willing to talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Done. That's it. And that's assertive. So that takes a lot of practice because what we're used to is fighting, fleeing, or freezing. So here's the clue. If we're in a cycle of non-self-talk, because this is self-talk and reaction and physical reaction and organizing and our reward systems up here. Back here is just reaction. So what happens is we have thinking errors. We go to extreme thinking errors. There's a thinking error 101 on the webinar YouTube channel too. Excellent. It's my favorite thing besides anger management. I mean, actually thinking errors is my favorite. And then emotional. So it's all, we have a thinking error first because we have a thought that comes in, then we have a feeling, then we have a physical reaction, somewhere in between there, all of that. Our body physically reacts, and then we have a behavior. That's all it is. So that's how the cycle works with every single thing we do thousands and millions of times a day. We have thoughts that come in. We have 2.5 million stimuli a day, which I think that's really low because I don't know when they've done the last, research on that of like 1 24-hour period. You have 2.5 million things that come into our brain. I think it's way more than that. We're stimulated by so much nowadays. So we have a thought that comes in, we have a reaction, we have a feeling, and then we decide what to do with the behavior. That's what we have control over is the behavior. So if you're in that cycle, which everyone is, but the clue is you've got to go through all that cycle. And if you're skipping feelings, so you just like to skip the feelings and go straight to the behavior, you're a 0 to 10. You're going to 10, and 10 is just a strong emotion, and not realizing it, right? So that's that on the fight. So this is how emotions hijack, okay? So here's mad, okay? Remember mad is a primary, so this little guy's mad. Then the secondary emotion is frustration, insecure, and I feel jealous. And those could be, then the behavior is outraged, resentment. I'm going to do some passive aggressive behavior. I'm going to feel really lonely, so I'm going to go, do something because I'm lonely. I feel worthless. I go into shame, way deeper because I'm insecure. The root issue of that is worthlessness or shame. Excuse me. So I'll take a break and breathe for a minute. So if we go into jealous, then we go into resentment too, and annoyed and really hurt deep down. And that's when our root issue kicks in. So chemicals are emotions. So when I say chemicals, don't let chemicals hijack the brain. They actually do hijack the brain, and they're chemicals because every chemical is connected to emotions. So a chemical is also a hormone, which is your stress hormone. So you're going to have serotonin or you're going to have cortisol. So when your adrenal gland is sending you cortisol, you're going to be hijacked to the back of your brain because cortisol says, survive, 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 do something fast. You're going to die right now. And you're hijacked, completely hijacked. We all have been there. We've all been to a 10. We know what that looks like. But so once we know that, we have to realize, okay, can I control a little bit of my behavior? I can't control my emotions and my thoughts, but I can control my behavior after I'm hijacked, right? So I allow time and practice. There's only 2 chemicals here. That's really down to 2 chemicals. And Heather Forbes in Beyond Consequences talks about love and fear. So there's only 2 chemicals. Every chemical that's reacted is either from love or fear. So fear is always back of the brain. Love is like this reasoning, logic, emotion. You can organize your thoughts with love. Fear, you're just in fear brain. So it's always fear-based if you're in the back of the brain. So you ask yourself, what am I what's my unresolved buried feelings? And that's what we're going to get into the root. Okay. There's always these unresolved buried belief systems. That is a thinking error story that you've had from childhood, you know. So we get stuck, and that's why it repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. And that's the root issue you got to get to. And you know, there's lots of ways to get to your root issue. But the reason why we would want to do this is because of your value system. This is a good time of year to revamp. I mean, I have families do it, individuals do it. It has nothing to do with goals. I don't even do goals. I do projects, or I do value systems. And I also do pick a book and read it for the whole year. That's it. Pick a book, listen to it 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times. I read a book. I pick a book and then I read it every month, the same book or the same chapter. I just pick a chapter and I read that over and over and over again, because it's something to do with my value system, that I want to improve my integrity, my positive thinking, my, you know, respectful results, you know, parenting, family, teamwork. If you want to grow in your career, it doesn't matter. You pick something that has to do with that, because it's your time, energy, and money that your value system is. If you don't have the value system, you will not improve. And that's the next webinar at 12:30. Talk a lot about that. Okay, so here's my wolves, okay? And I didn't bring my picture of my one white wolf that's really, really pretty. So I just put them on here so I don't have to hold up the picture to the camera if we were all together. But I don't know if you have heard of this story of the old Cherokee. So it's like, so, you know, there's an old story, and I'm going to share my screen so I can just show you. So, okay. The old Cherokee was teaching his grandson. A fight's going on inside me, he said to the boy, and it's a terrible fight, and it's between 2 wolves. One's evil, so anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, you know, self-pitying, guilt, and resentment and shame. There's not shame in there, but it's a shame. It's a deep lies and ego. Okay, so this is one, and I just call him the gray wolf. He's just right here on this shoulder. He's gray. Okay, you're gonna feed that ego, false lies, like thinking errors, self-pity. That's the you know, that's the victim role. You go into victim role. So when you feel guilt and resentment, okay, guilt's an okay one. Shame is not. So self-doubt, right? So then the other one is he's good. He's right. He's, you know, he's a little bit of this good and evil kind of stuff. I don't love that, but it's, you know, you get the message, right? So it's like he's joy, he's peace, he's love and hope and kindness, and he has empathy, and it's like, and truth and compassion. So that's these are values, by the way. Okay, so which one are you going to feed? You're going to feed the false thinking errors that you tell yourself, the doubt, the sorrow, the anger, and the envy, and regret. A lot of people live in a lot of regret, and it's like, you're going to feed that. You're going to feed it. And then here's the white wolf. It's like, okay, I'm going to feed truth and compassion for myself. Now, it's the same fight going on. So this is a value system. Anytime you're having anxiety, it's 100% fight against a value system. You're fighting against yourself, because you're like, oh, I should do that. I should call that person. But, you know, I don't know what to say to that person that kind of was rude to me at work. I should just And then you fight, and then you worry about it, and then you fight about it, and then you have, and then you have resentment, and then you have like these, this pity party about it. And so every single time, if you think about it, it's a fight against two value systems. This is what you really, and so this is what I actually call this: junk values or treasured values. So you can either feed the junk values that don't do you well. I love to feed myself donuts, junk values. I could feed myself donuts every day, like 2 in the morning and 2 at night. It would be my, and if I have donuts on my counter from Costco and I have a 6-pack or a 12-pack, I'm going to eat donuts. So it's really important for me not to have the donuts on my counter so I don't feed my junk values. Because I'm like, ooh, gluten and sugar is so good. I want to feed my junk values that tells me that that's going to make me feel better. That's a lie. It's a total lie. But it sure is yummy. Now, if I have my reward system and I switch that to, I get a donut when I do this, this, or this, and I don't eat 4 at a time, and I eat a donut because my value system says that's your reward system and you deserve it, that's different, right? So the grandson says, what's going to happen? Which wolf's going to win? And the chief, of course, says the one you feed. It will win, whichever one you feed. So that's my wolf story about values. So let's go back to the PowerPoint if I can find it. So let's see which one. Okay, that's from where I'm at. Okay, so let me get back to where I'm at. Well, go to that one. So that's the wolf story. So think about that again, junk values. And so when we're writing down our new value systems or what we need to work on as a family or a business or anything, we write down our junk values. This is what pulls me away from my treasured values. So write those down. If we don't have them written down, now also you can Google value list, and there's like 100 that comes up, 250 values, and there's just a list. And I have that list right here in my drawer. So like all these values, you can kind of look up that, and what you do is you circle the value that you want to work on or that you do have that's really strong, like trust or honesty or integrity. Those are something that you've had instilled in you as a value. Because the thing is when I'm talking about values is if we have a value system of kindness, what are you feeding? If you're angry, that's not kindness. You're feeding the anger instead of the kindness. Do you see what I'm saying? So it hijacks that. So how to find a new power in this, right? It's not just like, oh, it's super easy just to feed the good wolf, the treasured values, and not feed the junk values. No, not eating donuts is super hard for me, So, so that's what I talked about, the junk values or the treasured values. So how can we expect people to put value on our work when we don't value ourselves enough to set and hold uncomfortable boundaries? So once we know our value system, we move into, now we have to put a boundary around it. So I have to put a boundary around it is like, okay, so if I buy my donuts, I come up with different stories. I don't know. I just make fun of myself. So you guys can all just laugh at me, but it's like, okay, so I have to put a boundary around my reward system, right? If I brought home 6 donuts, I know I'm going to eat them. So I have to put a boundary around that. So Rising Strong, I don't have that book sitting right here, but of course it's right there. Gifts of Imperfection is right here. It's my top 5 book. So Brene Brown, she's referenced in the back. So that's just a quote from her. Boundaries are uncomfortable and it's super hard to hold them. Okay. But once again, if you're passive and you're being one of those anger, right? So one of those are angry. So it's like people think, oh, how could anger mean that you're passive? Well, it does. Those are the 3 types of anger that you're going to display. If you're shut down, that means you're angry, right? If your kid's shut down, that means they're hurt. And they're probably angry somewhere inside. So, so these are the boundaries instead of the battles. So how do we be assertive with our body language? I feel, I need, and I will statements again. That's listed again. Know your value system. We just went over that. Know your secondary emotion. If it comes from fear, if it's coming from fear, knowing where that's coming from. Be present. Fight, flight, or freeze does not work. It keeps us alive. You're going to run or you're going to slam on your brakes. You're going to run from a bear. You're going to slam on the brakes when a car is smashed up in front of you. It keeps us alive. It serves us well, but we can't stay in it. And we can't be in it when we're in relationships. So if you're going to be aggressive with the relationship, if you're going to be passive with the relationship, you're going to have issues. So we go by patterns and not potential. Okay. So that means that if you're going to put up a boundary around, something, and you're going to get angry at someone that doesn't, that violates your boundary, because that's going to happen, you're going to go off patterns. You're not going to go, wow, you have a lot of potential to follow my boundaries eventually. And as I keep putting them up for 10 years, I'm going to get you. I'm going to finally get you to follow my boundaries. It doesn't work that way. So you got to switch it up. If the pattern is they just keep violating your boundaries. And then you can watch the webinar on boundaries. So know yourself, know your self-care needs, know when your values have been crossed. Okay. So if we don't know when our values have been crossed because we didn't know what our values were, that's a problem. So know that your rights, know your rights, and don't apologize. Now, Harriet Lerner has a really good book that, Dance with Anger, but she has another one that's one of my favorites, is Why We Don't Apologize. So look up that one if you want. It's super good for couples. I do a lot of with couples work. That's a good one for couples, because it's like we have a really hard time apologizing in just general. We just don't apologize, right? So number 10 is just rehearse and repeat. And then the thing is we don't have battles. So what happens with a battle is aggression, which equals fear, which is anger. So the whole point is, if we can have some boundaries, I promise you our irritability will go down, because once because all I know is that gives us power. So once we have power in something, our irritability will go down. Think about the last time you felt completely powerless and write it on a paper right now. When's the last time you felt completely powerless, and what did you do? Did you go into aggressive or passive? Did you just shut down? Or you went a little manipulative and you went a little passive aggressive and you displaced on someone else? That's called road rage. Road rage is displacement. It's a defense mechanism, just like fight or flight, that says, I'm going to displace my feelings on you when you're a complete stranger or a total innocent person. Another one of that goes even deeper is called gaslighting. So someone can gaslight you because of their own emotions, they put them on you. That is not fair. That's when we have to put up a boundary. That's not fair. It seems like you're displacing. So displacement, the real definition of that is, my boss yelled at me, so I went home and kicked the dog. That's displacing. We're doing it all over the place. And last month in December, I did this extra webinar just on that. It's called Bullying in the Family. Why are we bullying? Why are we displacing on other people when we're irritable? Because we feel powerless. So when we get mad inside about our emotion or something we did, we blame others, we displace on them, we kick the innocent person, and we are doing that extremely well inside of our own homes. Now tell me I'm wrong. Anybody want to chat and say, yeah, no, we never bully each other, and none of the siblings in our house are bullying? And I mean, I had 6 siblings. Oh my gosh, we took it out on each other. Not always. My little brother, I had 2, and a little sister, I had one favorite and I had one that I didn't like. So, I displaced on one, and the other one were like, we're fine. So what do? You got to know what's going on first. And then there's got to be boundaries around that, because everyone's really irritable and we're taking it out on someone else. That's bullying. That's displacing. That's gaslighting. So whatever you want to call it, it's just aggressive. So boundaries continued. This is just the little list of what boundaries are. It's my favorite thing. So my tip on that one is always pick one, your physical, your emotional, your material, whatever it is, and hold it with someone or something for a month. Hold it. And do not, and how you hold it is to repeat it. The reason why we do that is we need protection, empowerment, healthy personal, values, respect, divided line, balance, vulnerability. We have to have all these. We model. We want it for modeling. We want it to teach. We want to be courageous. We want to have safety. So the thing is when we're in the back of the brain, that means we're not safe. So the number one way to get safe and get logical up here and get rid of the aggression or the anger, the irritability, or the fight, flight, or freeze is to be in the frontal lobes where we feel safe. So we have to get back to boundaries to feel safe and preserve relationships. It's the only way. That's the first step and the only step, really, because after that, you just go on. So these are the roots. So this is my little demonstration of the roots that I've used in the Thinking Errors class and lots of different in emotional intelligence, because this is what this means. And you could do the opposite of this too, but this is just the roots that keep us, stuck. Okay. So leafy issues is just temporary. They can be like seasonal, they can be yearly, they can be like, they go on a couple of years. So you have financial issues for a couple of years. Okay. They're not forever. You're feeding, I might feed my junk values and eat donuts for a while. And then I'm like, I got to stop. Thinking errors, addiction, those things can change and they can stop. But the thing is about these, think about your failed relationships over and over and over again. Those leaves drop off every season and feed the roots, right? That's how the tree works. And we water the roots. But if we're dropping the leaves and we're dropping them over and over and over again, what are you doing to the root issue?
I think I was unmuted that whole time I was out there. Making noise.
So let's see. So that's the issue, is you have to remember the tree. So so take a minute and make a note and say, I'm going to draw a tree today. And I'm going to put one leafy issue in there. Then I'm going to say, how does this make me feel? Your secondary emotions. And then what is the root issue to that? You're going to find it. You go to therapy for that. The root issue is what we treat, what you need to be treated for, what you have to get through. Now, this is a just let it be. You don't get over and just move on from your roots. I'm sorry to burst the bubble. I am not that kind of therapist. So it's like family studies, my family studies degree, I'm a certified family life educator of 10 years. And there's so much research on our first 18 years, and I go further with 26 till your brain's developed. But there's so much to that. Those are your root issues. That is loss, grief, and trauma, developmental or relational trauma in your under 18. So developmental trauma means 0 to 18. Your self-concept, abandonment, shame, and denial, severe mental health issues, severe health issues are in your root. So if you keep on eating, the way you eat and your diabetes gets worse, right? If you have a diabetes, you're pre-diabetic and you keep on eating the stuff that adds to diabetes, which is the leafy issue, guess what you're feeding? The root issue, right? And how does this make you feel? Well, I just kind of feel stuck and powerless and I don't really, whatever. I feel hopeless. So you just keep doing that. Over time, the roots get deeper, deeper, deeper. And it will not, it's going to take longer and longer to get back to a different leafy issue. So that's the little exercise with that. And if you have questions about that. And And I've had questions before when I've taught this. One question was, how do you know what your root issue is? Well, there's some ideas there, but they're thinking error stories from your past, for sure. Okay, for sure. The self-concept stories, right? Like you are dumb, or you can't do this, or or this always happens to me, or and because you've been told that, and that's stuck. So the root issue of trauma work, therapy, EMDR, self-concept, all that kind of stuff is what you get to work on to eliminate some of those root issues. They can be eliminated, but you have to go into acceptance first, because the opposite is denial in the root issue. So how do you keep growing this? I've just talked about it mostly. So here's what's irritability, stuffing, denial, overwhelmed, raging. There's thinking errors and shame, fatigue, burnout. So I talk a lot about burnout. If we're burned out, good luck. You're not going to get there. It's not depression. It's not anxiety. It's burnout. It's burnout. And so there's a whole webinar on that. It's like, okay, am I burned out? Am I just burned out because I'm so irritable? Because irritability is cortisol levels. Okay. So every single time, again, your cortisol levels go high and it sends you into the back of the brain. So this is inside your body. This has nothing to do with anything else. First and foremost, it is connected from gut, adrenal gland, nervous system, brain. So we have to correct that first before we can even correct the outside, right? So it's inside the body first is how I teach it. So if we're burned out inside, our physical health, our physical balance, we're not ever going to have the skills and the willpower to go into fixing the root issue, right? So what happens is, if we want to reverse irritability, we have compassion, courage, and connection. And Johann Hari in Lost Connections explains that. Why we are depressed and anxious and depleted is because of loss of connection. Well, this last year wasn't so great for that. We really couldn't connect in our normal way. So it's caused some mental health disconnect and irritability. So it makes sense. It's all textbook. So the emotional numbness is actually, people think, oh, when we go into shutting down and passive, where we shut down and go numb, it's actually because we're overloaded in emotion. So when we're too overloaded in emotion, we go either numb or we rage. It's either aggressive or passive. So that means we're overloaded. And that means that we're stuffed, and stuffers turn into volcanoes. So you're either going to volcano numb or you're going to volcano rage right here. Connect with, so how we get over that is connect with the unharmed. Okay, what does that mean? That means the unharmed neural pathways that are unharmed. We connect with what's unharmed. Okay, so think about what's unharmed about me. Oh, well, this, and this. This is not harmed. We want to connect with that inside of us. We want to hold the hurt and be okay. We want to be attuned. We want to release shame. We want to gain power. We want to get balanced. So that's a little slide about how to get from here to here. And that's just some ideas on, here's how the roots grow. And this is how to get rid of the deep roots, right? To get grounded, to be balanced, to get so we're not burned out. And this is a little practice of love meditation. So you can all, when you get the PowerPoint, you can all just look at this and go through it if you want, or print it off or whatever, this slide. It's a 20-minute, situation. It's a 15-minute one. You can do it for 10 minutes. It's a good distraction. It's not, of course, if we repeat something, we're going to have a better result, but it says, every morning, or any time of the day, but it's just the opposite of fear is love. So if we want to produce more of that, we'll get to that. So let's get to the chat. And here's some, let's see, I talked about a couple of these books. Lost Connections is right there. Johann Hari. Uncovering the real causes of depression and unexpected solutions. 7 Habits is always in my top 5. Some Boundaries, Rising Strong by Brene Brown. Truman is a good, it's called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. That's the root. If you bury it, you bury them more, you bury it more, they don't die. Promise. They live, they go bigger and deeper and just, cause more trouble. The Body Keeps the Score is a deep, deep book about healing trauma, which you have to be ready for that one. So be cautious on that one. It's pretty deep. It's pretty great. So let's go to the chat. Some questions, and we'll get on to the next one.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, so a couple of questions. Someone asked if this is recorded and if they'll be able to view it later. And yes, you will. I'll send you the link and PowerPoint slides probably tomorrow. And then someone asked if you'd list your books at the end. So you did. And then a question was, what is the difference between gaslighting and disagreeing?
Good question, because gaslighting is way different. So I can disagree with someone. So the difference between, so this is habit 5, seeking to understand first before you understood. This is thinking error number 1. I can see someone else's perspective, or I can't. You're a very black and white, person that cannot see someone else's perspective. Disagreeing is, I can see your perspective, but I don't agree with it. I don't agree with your behavior, 100%. Now, if I don't agree with your behavior and I am mad that you had behavior against me, my team didn't come home on time for their curfew, right? I just throw out whatever. So I can disagree and say, you know what, I don't agree with your behavior. And it's really disappointing because it's disrespectful. And I'm really angry because I've been waiting for you from 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to be home at 1 and blah, blah, blah. And so is that a great time to be angry and stay up and go to bed not angry? Heavens, no. You shut it down and you say, I'm really disappointed in you and I disagree with your behavior. But if you gaslight it, it's I'm mad, so I'm going to rage on you because of your behavior. That doesn't work. That's gaslighting. So disagree all the time with, I can see your perspective, but here's the limits. Right? So does that make sense? Gaslighting is different. You're projecting your emotion onto someone else. So if I feel like, if I'm a dishonest person and I tell everyone else in my world that they're dishonest, that's gaslighting. Super dysfunctional. So,
okay. And then someone said, someone just made a comment that said, healthy disagreement, there's a resolve of some kind, mutual respect for different views.
Opposite. Yeah.
And then someone said, how do we cope with the fake news?
Turn it off. Done. Turn it off. Stop watching it. It's stressful. It causes severe. So this is an option we talked about in my anxiety program that someone brought that up. And I said, number 1, put limits and boundaries on your time, energy, and money. It's your value system. Do you want to watch it over and over and over again and have acute stress disorder? You will. That's actually proven. Acute stress disorder, you will have it. That turns into burnout. The other part is you say you want to watch the news and you pick and choose what you're going to do. You're going to read it now and you're going to only read it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for 15 minutes and then you're going to be done. Do not watch it before bed. Stuff like that, right? All this stuff that's going on. Oh, brings up as a reality. So how do you not gaslight them? Yeah. So as a reality of news, of fake news, it's like, so the thing about, we have to remember about humans is we all have our own perspective and you can't push your values or your perspective on somebody else. So if they bring up fake news, to them, it's not fake. To you, it is. Okay. So then you disagree and you move on. I can't argue with people about what their reality is, right?
Okay, I think that's all I've got so far. So I'm going to end this one and we will see the majority